I am the type of person, and let me know if you agree with me. I am the type of person that is very much, I would rather you tell me no straight um, at first, no matter, just say no. I'm much more comfortable with that than an individual saying yes and then waiting to the last minute to um, let me know that the yes was not actually um, something that they're going to fulfill.
Say anything with Kina B.
Why can't we just say anything?
With Kina B.
Hi, and welcome to Say Anything with Kina B. I am Kina B. Thank you so much for joining me. It is a pleasure to be with you here today. I am sitting in Wimbius Market, an art gallery and gift market located in Quincy, Florida. So if you ever happen to be in this area, it's in North Florida, come on by and say hi. Remember to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with your friends. And this is a conversation. So go ahead and sound off in the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. Today, we are going to talk about reliability is a skill. Reliability is a skill. And what do I mean by reliability? I mean that if you promise to do something, that you follow through. It's the follow through part. I have known people who actually make it a point never to promise, but they always make it a point to follow through. And that is something that is very important. They show up and they are helpful. And if they do decide to do something, they just follow through in any way that they possibly can. And I think personally, we should all strive to be that person. We should all strive to be the person that if you decide to do something, that you follow through with what you've decided to do. This is about learning and getting better with time. And so as I experience things on my entrepreneurship journey, I like to share with you what I experience because you might be able to glean something from it and apply it to your life in a practical sense, So this isn't a new lesson, right? For me, it's just a lesson that I think that bears repeating because it shows up in different ways when you're in different types of relationships with individuals. And what I mean by relationships is not necessarily personal, but it could be business relationships, academic relationships, colleagues, but not necessarily personal per se. But it can also happen in personal relationships, of course. Probably most of the time, you experience the reliability or lack of reliability in personal relationships, but it happens in business as well. So it just happens differently. So it's something that should be bared in mind, and people should always have plans for. There should be a backup plan, contingency plans for when things happen. And it's not necessarily because of lack of reliability on individuals' parts, but things just happen. Right? And you have to be able to, I'm going to use the word pivot. I know I know that not a lot of people like to use that word. I guess it's been overused, but it means something. It's pivot for a reason, okay? You do have to learn how to pivot in life, but still stay on your path. So this episode isn't about calling people out. It's about calling out patterns of behavior. And because when commitments are broken last minute, the damage may not necessarily be emotional, it's just operational. But operation has something to do with how a business will function, and the trustworthiness of partnerships going forward. You have to really sit down and think about that thing, like how you plan on interacting in the future with individuals. Everyone has emergencies. This isn't about that. This is about the patterns, again, of last minute behavior or withdrawals from commitments, and why people say yes when they should say no. Saying yes is easy, but following through is the real work. Following through is what builds relationships. The yes part isn't where the relationship is. It's the follow through. It's the integrity. I'm big on integrity myself. Huge on it. I just think that regardless of if I like or dislike a person, if they are a person who has a level of integrity, then I recognize that. I recognize that they're a person of integrity, whether or not I get along with them in any other sense, like, personally or whatever the dynamic is. I believe that when people are people of integrity, I can deal with that much easier than I can deal with a person who lacks integrity. So there are five, according to my notes, in my research, 5 different types of non-committals. The non-committal person, or the person who will say they're going to do something and then later on pull out at the last minute. So lack of reliability. And they are the overpromiser, the conflict avoider, the opportunist, the control seeker, and the disorganized optimist. Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. What is an overpromiser? It's exactly in the word, over and then promise, meaning they say they're going to do X, Y, Z. Something is, you may or may not have even asked for any of that. But they will promise things that it's like, oh, okay, great, that's phenomenal, didn't even ask for it, but they'll promise it to you. And then later on, they can't deliver what they promised. Remember in Star Trek when, I don't know if any of you are Trekkies. I love a good Star Trek. I'm a Trekkie. I love, my favorite one is The Next Generation, but I love them all. So I think this was a crossover episode. It might have even been the movie in Star Trek where Lieutenant LaForge was talking to Scotty, the 2 engineers. It had to be the movie, okay? And they're fixing something, and the captain asks if it can be done in 2 hours or something like that, a certain amount of time that it can be done. And Scotty, the older one, if you know Star Trek, Scotty is in the original Star Trek, the first version. Um, and he, in the movie, they cross over because of the plot. I can't recall exactly the whole plot. Shame on me. But this scene is basically, they get asked, they're fixing something, they get asked how long it's going to take. Scotty says like something like 4 or 5 hours. And Lieutenant LaForge looks over to him after Captain had gone and said, you know, this would only take a couple of hours. We could do this in a couple of hours, right? And he was like, always, he said, always under promise and then over deliver. That's what he says to LaForge. He said, it makes you look like a genius. It makes you look like a genius. And that, my dear, is a lesson. Don't over promise, under promise, and then over deliver. That's amazing. You know, people aren't expecting the over delivery, right? They're expecting the under. Or they're expecting exactly what you said. So, you know, over promisers though, they do the opposite. They over promise, and then either they under deliver or they don't deliver at all, because they over promised. So then the next one is conflict avoider. This is the person or individual who, because they don't want to disappoint you, or they do not want to cause a conflict of some kind, or they don't want you to be mad at them, will say yes in the moment when really they mean no. And then later on they have to say no. Or they don't say anything at all, and it just causes an issue. They just don't deliver. I think I don't understand the conflict avoider. I don't understand it, because by avoiding conflict, they cause conflict, which means they're not avoiding conflict. It's like, well, it doesn't make much sense to me. I can't reconcile it in my brain. But I get it. I get it. In the moment, I get it, but I don't at the same time. But in any event, you're going to come across a conflict avoider. There is the opportunist. The opportunist is the person who needs you in order to gain a particular visibility, or whatever it is that whatever the goal is by connecting themselves to you, whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish, that is what they have it there for. And I'm not talking about a mutual goal that individuals have and they're both trying to accomplish something, but they are both working together to do it. And it may not even be the same goal, but they are working in kind to do that goal. That's different. I'm not talking about those types of relationships. I'm talking about a person who actually, it's like a leech. They leech on you for a particular reason. And then once they have fulfilled that reason, whether or not you have achieved your goal is no longer considered by them. They've achieved what they wanted, and then they pull out. And they leave you to deal with the fallout of the pulling out. That's an opportunist. They're there for as long as they need to be, and regardless of what they promised to you, they're pulling out when it's no longer a situation where they need you, right? So for whatever reason, they don't value you, or they don't value the relationship anymore. Whatever the case may be, that's the opportunist. Opportunists have a way of trying to come back later, by the way. Of all of the individuals that I'm speaking of today, types of behaviors, the pattern, opportunist is probably the one you want to avoid yourself the most, because the pattern that they exhibit doesn't normally stop, and they will come back over and over and over and over again and do it to you for as long as as long as you let them, they will. Next, the control seeker. That's exactly what it sounds like. The person who wants to be in control over the situation. Okay, so control seekers are basically after leverage, and by depending on them, you let go of any safeguards that you have or safety nets that you have. They're hoping to gain complete power over a situation and or you. And in that way, they exert a level of power and authority over you. Avoid those. They and opportunists, to me, are very closely knit together. Then there's the disorganized optimist, who I empathize with. I empathize with the disorganized optimist. They have big visions, big visions, and they just hope that it will work out, but they haven't done any of the groundwork to make sure that it works out. There's a level of faith that a person has, and anyone who's biblically, anyone who's into reading their Bible knows that faith without work is dead. So you can't just be optimistic. You have to actually follow through on the things that need to be done in order to ensure that when it all finishes, that there is a plan in place and will actually come to fruition. And disorganized is a main part of the optimist issue. An organized optimist does not have this problem. Well, everybody has their own way of handling people who flake out. What happens when people become unreliable? You can lose money. You can lose reputation. You have to expend emotional labor, meaning whatever waves of emotion, whether it's anger or disappointment or sadness about the situation, you now have to expend that. Go through whatever process you need to go through to get past it. Community trust. You can lose community trust. With business, when you don't follow through, even if it's somebody else's quote unquote fault, it's never someone else's fault. It's your fault because you need to have a backup plan. You need to be able to pull through and come out and deliver on your end, regardless of what anyone else has promised or not promised. And most people, I think, are empathetic or understanding that things happen, but we're not talking about situations where things happen that are out of one's control. We are talking about the situations where you can have a plan, and the way that you know this is by recognizing patterns of behavior and having a plan in place for individuals who you may work with that have those types of patterns of behavior. Every last minute cancellation has some type of cost, and that cost doesn't necessarily mean actual money. But the cost is borne by the person who backed out to the person who absorbs it, right? And it can be testing to individuals' resolve Here's the good thing. Here's the good thing. We can all learn from this. Okay? This is not something that you can't get past. This is something that you can't reach to another level on. These are things that just happen almost every day in business and in people's regular lives. Things like this happen, right? So it's, again, it's not about where we place blame. It's about, do we learn, do I learn, do you learn from this? And how do we adjust what we do in the future so that when it happens again, because it's gonna happen. Somebody's gonna overpromise, underdeliver. Someone's going to be conflict avoidant. Someone, you know what I mean? Things like that happen. It just does. It's just, at what level is it happening to you at? And can you absorb it? And do you have the resources to pivot? Have you a backup plan in the event that things like this happen? Or is it already in the plan? Maybe it's not a backup plan, but it's in the initial plan that if XYZ happens, then this comes into play. If this doesn't happen, then this comes into play. Lately, that's what I do. I have plans within plans that if this doesn't work out, this component will take precedent. If this doesn't work out, then this is the backup. And I put timelines to it, because if I don't get a guarantee by this date and I've followed up 2-3 times, then I'm going to move on to the next thing. And so that even if individuals do follow through, I still have whatever I have in place. That way, there's always something in place. There's always something or someone in place. Standards aren't punishment. When you have a standard for yourself and then you keep to that standard, to another person, it may be considered a boundary, and that's okay. But it's clear. It sets a tone from the beginning of what you will tolerate and what you won't tolerate for your personal life or for your business. And that's okay. And I think it's really good. It's healthy, particularly if you plan on doing business with a person again. Now, if you don't, you don't, right? But if you do plan on utilizing a person in the future for something, because maybe there are some components about them that are very helpful, then you need to be clear about what your standards are, so that they understand what their boundaries are. Consistency is a form of respect. It's being able to follow through is a form of respect. Being able to confirm is a form of respect. And it doesn't mean that you don't trust someone if you have a backup plan. But you're still optimistic about it working out, right? So what can you do to improve? Figure out if you're any of those people, right? Or if you're the person who absorbs the impact from any of those people, and develop a sense of standards that you know that you want to practice in everyday life, and then hold yourself accountable to that standard. And in holding yourself accountable to that standard, you hold other people accountable to that boundary. If this episode made you feel uncomfortable, sit with that. Just sit with it. Sometimes we have to sit in our own comfortability. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Remember to follow, like, subscribe, share, and leave a comment. I'll see you next time.